Welcome to Get Your Coin Sis podcast, the audio show designed exclusively for you. I'm Nell Latrice, your host and fellow mom on a mission to empower, inspire, and guide you on the path to financial independence. Tune in for expert advice, real life stories, and actionable tips to help you secure the bag and truly get your coin, sis. Because you deserve financial success and stability. Let's thrive together. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Get Your Coin Sis podcast, where we dive into financial habits, faith, and real life events to help you build a legacy. I'm your host, Nell Latrice, and today we have a special guest, and her name is Karen Caldwell, also known as Casey the Counselor. She is a licensed therapist, spiritual life coach, and a career consultant who helps women level up their rituals and spirituality. So, welcome, Karen, to the podcast today. I will have her introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her.
Thank you so much. This is my first podcast, so I'm excited to be here. So, yes, my name is Karen Caldwell. I go by Casey the Counselor. That is my personal brand that I'm building out loud. So, a little bit about me. As you heard, I am a licensed therapist in the state of Illinois. I also have a private practice. So, within my private practice, I primarily see military service members, their dependents, and veterans as well. And so I've been in private practice for almost 4 years, and it's really exciting to bet on myself and work for myself. So I'm really liking the autonomy. And outside of my private practice, I also have a blog as well, which is called Casey the Counselor. And so with my blog, that's where you'll see a lot of my spirituality content. And I have an online store to go with the blog as well. That's a little bit about me. And thank you so much for having me today.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, we're going to get into a little lightweight kind of questions so all of our listeners can get to know you and how we can help them level up with your expertise, okay? How did your experiences shape the way you approach your work today?
I will say that I am a multifaceted woman. I have many interests. And so I'm able to tap into my different curiosities. I have the discretionary income, I have the time and the energy to kind of see what I like and what I don't like. And that really has shaped my career trajectory in terms of me just doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So I would say that that has shaped me and where I am today. So outside of my private practice, I also have my blog. So within my blog, I have an online store, and then I do pop-up shops with the products from my online store. Yeah, so I've been able to develop a budget and save for quite some time now. I'm really good with my relationship with money. So that has allowed me to have a stash of discretionary income to invest in my passion projects and different things that I like to do to just spend my time and make some money. So outside of my private practice, I also have my online store, caseythecounselor.com. Within that, I have spirituality products that I offer, and I do pop up shops. So, my pop up shops are in the St. Louis metropolitan area, and I do them every so often. Right now, with the holidays, we have a lot of holiday bazaars and pop up shops going on in the area. So, I do that, and it's fun to kind of get, some money on the spot. Outside of that, I also have a blog, and I make a little bit of income with my blog as well. So, it's just a natural extension of my wellness work, my private practice, my online store, and my blog.
Yeah, so I heard you say you have a great relationship with money. So I know that some of our habits are developed. We're kids, we learn our habits from our mom, our siblings, whoever you grew up with is where you learn your money habits from. Can you tell us a little bit about where your good money habits came from, or was it just like a self kind of thing and you kind of just got on board with yourself? Like, this is what I'm going to do.
That's a good question. I would say watching my mentors and how they move with their money, how they spent their money, and where they invested their money. I'm grateful to have a really solid mentorship circle, is what I call it. People from undergrad, professionals from grad school, and just from like my community who I have that relationship with. And we talk about money all the time. And just that exposure enlightened me to kind of tap into my relationship with money, and I find that money just finds me, like
Yeah.
opportunities, my different ideas turn to money. And so I would say it's a little bit of both, me having the confidence and curiosity to ask questions and to observe people, and also implementing what I've watched and what I've seen.
Yes, yes, that's great. I like that you said that money comes to you, flows through you. I always tell people that what you put out or what you're trying to get from the world is what you're going to get back. And kind of that energy and, kind of remembering, kind of telling yourself that you are a money magnet. I always say that to myself because I feel like being positive, telling myself self good things also helps build those good habits too. That's really good. So, what are some pivotal moments that made you realize this importance of spirituality in your wellness work?
Ooh, yeah, working in corporate, I needed an outlet to like channel a lot of the negative energy I was experiencing, the microaggressions, just the racism. It's a real thing. And so I
Yes.
started to write, and my writing turned into blog posts, and I started to write about mental health and wellness. So this started June of 2020, and my initial name of my blog was Mental Bliss, and I recently
Mhm.
relaunched my blog to Casey the Counselor. So I would say during COVID, after I quit a job that I moved across the country for,
Wow.
yeah, it was a lot going on, and journaling really just was my healthy outlet.
Yeah. So you said you moved across the country for another job. How long did you work that job for before you was like, this is not for me?
Less than 6 months. So
Oh
I'm
wow.
originally from Illinois, and I relocated to the Bay Area in California to work for a small consulting firm, and it was less
Oh,
than 6 months.
oh wow. That is crazy. Like, so what made you put yourself out there like, hey, I got this job opportunity. I'm just gonna take it and move. Like what inside you was like, I'm gonna take this leap and just move.
Well, I love to travel. I'm naturally ambitious. I
Mhm.
also don't have children, so I can kind of pick up and go as I please. I'm very
Yeah.
flowy, go with the flow, free, and I like opportunities. So I don't feel my kind of
Yes.
way when people say I'm an opportunist. I am. I love a good opportunity. And
Right.
so one came across my lap, and I took the next step and I did it.
Yes, amen to that. Because I have children, and of course that does put a little damper on how you can move. You know what I'm saying? Because you have to have other people in mind when you do things. So it
Right.
is really good that you just have yourself to worry about. So it's like I can go ahead and take this opportunity and not have to have extra, people or things or stuff to coordinate. So that's so true, girl. If I didn't have any kids, I would have been up and moving too. So I can feel it for sure. So one of your key aspects of your work is emotional regulation. How do you regulate your emotions, especially when you're faced with challenging situations?
I really want a lot of people, women in particular, to hear me when I say this. Solitude and silence. Those are the primary ways that I regulate my emotions, especially when I'm presented with like adversity and challenges. I'm someone who thrives in my solitude. Like I need time to be with myself all the time. During
Hmm.
that time, I get the best business ideas. I just have time to think. And I'm so thankful that I only need to think for myself, because in my moments of solitude, I'm just relaxed. I can do my journaling. I can jot down my business ideas, as I mentioned. It's powerful. And I am aware of the value of just sitting with yourself.
Yes, it is so important to have that quiet time so you can think, kind of bring stuff back full circle. Anything. I feel like it's so important to have that time to yourself because always on the go or always, having something on your mind, you need a clear mind to make good decisions. So that's really good. So what in what specific instance have these techniques helped you overcome a difficult situation? So, for example, you're, quitting a job after 6 months and you just, kind of just started. That's really brand new. Like, how did those techniques help with that situation?
Well, it just gave me an option. And a lot of times we feel like we don't have options when things kind of hit the fan. So when I was able to just sit with myself and even consult with a girlfriend of mine, I was like, I just need time to think this through because this was an expensive move. It cost $10,000 to move. And so, I had
Okay.
other things on the line to consider, but just sitting with myself and like trusting my discernment and my intuition with something else that helped me because in silence, it kind of comes to me and I'm able to receive it and listen to like my body. Our body gives us feedback all the time. It's what are we doing with it? And so, yeah.
Yes, yes. So, what is some advice that you can give to someone who's struggling with the emotional regulation? So, even with making a big decision like that, how do you you know, regulate your emotions?
I think something that may be helpful and that has helped past clients is people have to first identify the relationship they have with themselves and what that looks like. And that can be a hard conversation for people. So, just really sitting down, fleshing out your values, your morals, who you want to be, your current shortcomings, and just reverse engineering your lifestyle from there. All of it truly boils down to mindset. So, just really sitting down and honestly answering the question, how would I describe the relationship I have with myself?
Yes, that's great. I wanted to kind of expound on because I know you're a licensed counselor, and I kind of want our listeners to get a few tips and tricks on how they can regulate their emotions because I know sometimes I had a hard time doing that. So I know for me, I probably count to 10 in a moment or like you said, have quietness. But what are some ways that you would give your clients, to regulate their emotions?
Number one, silence. Just sit in silence. Like it's okay to take a few minutes for yourself. Number two, just learn to prioritize yourself and understand that feelings aren't facts. Those are two separate things.
Yes.
Number three, it's okay to seek out help because a lot of times we're not good with self soothing. I can tell someone to sit in silence all day until they're blue in the face. Are they going to do it? Probably not. They may need guidance. And so that's where therapy comes in, coaching, which is different than therapy. And so that'll be the third thing is to seek out some support. It's okay that you're going through something. The most important thing is that you acknowledge that you're not good with regulating your emotions and you are putting a plan in place to improve that.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know in a black community, it's like a stigma to go get counseling. You know what I mean? Like it's seen as a bad thing, or people don't want to do it. They don't feel like they need it. So, what kind of advice would you give to someone who say they don't need counseling, but they really do? You know what I mean? Like, because I know I've heard people I've met people who needed counseling. They be like, I don't need it, or or they don't want to face those issues. So, what would you tell somebody who has that stigma towards counseling? What would you tell them to do?
Well, as Black people, I'm Black, so as Black people, we're the ones who need it the most. And yes, there is stigma surrounding it. Yes, people don't believe it, especially when we get into the Gen X populations and above. And so some of us are more comfortable going to our pastor. I will say that a pastor is not a licensed professional. So
Right.
that's a step in the right direction. It'll get you started. However, there are licensed therapists, licensed psychologists for a reason. We have a special skill set that allows us to address mental health conditions. And so you can lead a horse to the water, but baby, you can't make it drink. So it has
Mm-hmm.
to be in you, not on you,
Yes.
to
Yes.
receive help. And people like me and others who are in the profession, because when you think about licensed therapists, on a macro level, there's not that many Black professionals
No.
internationally, and even less at the national level. And so, what I'm doing now on this podcast, spreading awareness, my personal blog on spirituality, kind of gets the people going and it ignites the conversation within our community. Something else to consider is the spirituality aspect of it. A lot of people are veering away from religion and they're becoming more spiritual with like abundance and manifestation and different kind of ancestral practices. And so that's something else that Black people may be more comfortable with. Talking to like a spiritual life coach like myself or a therapist who specializes in spirituality practices so that we can feel more comfortable seeking these services.
Yes, that's wonderful. So, because I know I've invested in counseling and it was really hard to find a black therapist. Like, I searched high and low. I finally found one. She's booked and busy, but I found one. And I noticed that with a lot of counselors in general, even non-black counselors or therapists, it's like their schedules are full because it's like it's not that many of you guys out there. So it's like we're all grasping at straws trying to get an appointment, with a professional. I do think that field is underrated for sure. So we definitely need more people like you out there. So over the years, how have you invested in yourself with your personal and professional growth? Because it's very important to do it. So how have you done it?
Yes. Well, number one, mentors. They have been my backbone for as long as I can remember. I have mentors from different professions and backgrounds as well. I have a Black man, I have a white woman, I have a doctor, I have a consultant. So my mentorship team, they're very diverse. So that's helpful because it allows me to be exposed to different perspectives as it relates to my professional development. So mentors is number one. Number two, executive coaching. So I've spent quite a bit of money in terms of an investment with an executive coach just to help me build like my leadership skills, to flesh out my values, and to help with the business side of things as well. And it's well worth the money. So shout out to Lynn Courier out of St. Louis if she's listening.
Yes.
Lynn, thank you so much. You will be so proud of me. So executive coaching as well. Also therapy.
Yes.
I have definitely invested in therapy, especially when I was in corporate and I had benefits. That's another thing. People think it's so expensive. Well, if you have benefits at your job, whether it's EAP, health insurance, that can kind of offset some of the costs for therapy. And shout out to my therapist. She is wonderful as well. So those would be the top three things. Definitely the mentorship, executive coaching, and therapy.
Perfect, perfect. Yes, I know I took advantage of EAP at my job and they were able to give me 6 months free over, or it was so many sessions that you can get over a year's time or whatever it was. And I was able to use all of those. So yes, if you have EAP at your job, it is a wonderful resource for sure.
Yeah, it's a limit, but it is available. And I would say the fourth thing is my hobbies.
Oh, yes.
Something else that I prioritize is my hobby. So right now I'm really into mat Pilates. I do it at home via YouTube. I roller skate. Of course, I journal, and I'm an arts and crafter. So I do that as well.
Yes, I always tell people to do what they love also because then you don't feel like you're always working or that you're getting burnt out when you do the stuff that you like.
It's fun,
Yes.
and it's always fun to try different things. Like I also recently took some private lessons for pickleball. So it's just
Ooh.
stepping out of your comfort zone. I'm not the best at it, but it's fun, and the people are very welcoming. So hobbies for sure.
Yes, that is great. So, because you invest a lot in other people, how do you balance that out with yourself? Like, how do you're giving people all of these things, resources, tools, and that can also be draining, always being, the helper. So, how do you
Yes.
invest in yourself and balance that with yourself?
I prioritize rest. I also have days where I don't talk to anybody at all.
Yes,
Okay.
that's great.
I also really like to travel. And so when I travel, it's a whole experience. I like luxury accommodations. I'm ordering room service. I just like the convenience of things. So I would say those three things. And I have a solid group of associates that I can kind of talk to and vent to as well, along with my mentors and my family. So those would be some things that I do to kind of relax and reset outside of pouring into other people.
Yes, that's perfect because I know that that can be a lot mentally too, trying to help other people with their issues, and then you still have to go home and deal with whatever issues you have. So that is a lot. So that's great advice. So what's some actionable advice that our listeners can take away from today's episode that they can get right on it? And maybe that's glow up spiritually, or that's something that'll help them financially, something that a actionable tip that they can take today away from our episode.
People need to take the next step. At some point, you got to stand up. You've watched enough YouTube videos, you listened to enough podcasts, you read enough books. What action are you doing to take the next step? It can be a small step. No one is saying invest $1,000 in an executive coach, but do something. Even if it's at the local level, look at your network laterally. Like take the next step and do something. A lot of us have these grand ideas, these great business ventures, but what are we doing to actually stand on business?
Yes. Yes, I always tell people they need to stand on business because I have people who tell me they tell me everything they want to do. I want to do this, that. They have all, like you said, all of these good ideas, but they're never taking action on it. And I'm like, well, it's not going to take care of itself. That business is not going to start itself. That hobby isn't going to start itself. You have to do something. So I've always been a doer, not just a talker. But I know that everyone isn't like that around me. So I know I can be kind of harsh sometimes with my advice. Some people don't want to come to me for advice, but that's because I just have that go-getter personality inside me,
Mhm.
and everybody doesn't have that. So I always have to remember that everybody isn't like me. So, yes.
That's a good point. I learned that the hard way because with us being so ambitious and so confident, we naturally exude that and extend that into other people. But some people, they don't want to be ambitious and confident. It's like they talk a good game, but there is no action.
Zero.
And so we have to preserve our energy and just transmute that back into ourselves.
Yes, definitely. So, what are some tips? So, what's some of your things that you do on a daily basis or in your routine that you feel like will be helpful to other people?
Spending a lot of time in nature. I love being outside with the seasons changing, maybe not so much because I'm in the Midwest, so it's going to get cold very soon.
Yeah.
However, spending as much time as you can in nature. I like to work outside. I'll bring my laptop. I have a little setup, and it's just nice to get fresh air and to be outside. So I
Yeah.
think that's something that may be helpful to some people.
Yeah, yeah. I took a class before and it was about mindfulness because sometimes we're always on a go, go, go. And it's like you arrive past the same thing every day, but you never noticed that it was there. So it's like taking the time out to be mindful of your surroundings or just stepping outside, like you said, getting a breath of fresh air and just kind of looking at things around you, unplugged from the phone, social media, talking to someone, like being mindful of the things around you. I just recently became more mindful by getting outside, walking, burning some calories while I'm doing it. And it's so peaceful to do that because I'm like, I'm also getting that peace of mind by getting outside, but I'm also being mindful of my surroundings while I'm out there too.
That's a good point. And going back to my hobbies, I was sure to pick hobbies that will have me active. And so it's like you're habit stacking. You're kind of doing two things at once versus having a long to do list of things to kind of get done. So that's something else. Find a hobby that's going to get you active. And something else is learn how to regulate your nervous system. That's where a lot of problems stem from. People's nervous system is dysregulated and it's in shambles, and they don't know how to regulate it. And that's definitely going to require some therapy or some coaching. But that's something else that I feel like is not often discussed. Our nervous system, how to regulate it, and how it impacts our ability to think, how we feel, things like that.
What's some signs that your nervous system is kind of out of whack, or what can someone look for in that instance?
That is a great question. I would say one thing that comes to mind is your body. So if you have certain aches or pains in certain parts of your body, like women, for example, we hold a lot of trauma in our womb, in our stomach area. It's bundled up. So I would say listening to your body and how it feels. That's one way. Another way is identifying your thought patterns. One way you can do this is to actually write them down, whether you journal, do an audio, a voice memo on your phone. There's different ways to capture your thoughts. So capture them and then review them because as humans, we all have patterns. And so that's another way to identify like what's going on internally. And if you want to change it, you can reverse engineer that as well. So definitely your body, leaning into how it feels. And if you are in certain environments that your energy is off, you start to feel tense. We know the feeling. Our body will tell us, right? I'm sure you've been in a situation where you're like, I don't know about this. Your body is
Yep,
letting
that
you
gut.
know you don't feel safe. Maybe you should get out of here, kind of thing. And so we have to
Yes.
listen to our bodies in order to understand our nervous system and to regulate it.
Yes, yes, that's so true with being in tune with your intuition, with
Mhm.
your gut. If, like you said, I know sometimes I get in something, that's the first thing when it click in my mind, like, you're not supposed to be doing this. Right? So it is a good thing to be in tune with that because I think a lot of people ignore those thoughts or those voices that come in their head and they kind of just go with it, and do stuff anyway. So I had to learn that too. And I also had to reprogram the things I tell myself in my mind. Like if something happens, it's like, oh, I can't do this. Oh, I don't know if this is going to happen for me. I had to reprogram that thinking like, okay, if I'm in this situation and it's not going how I wanted to, I just need to reprogram, okay, maybe this opportunity isn't for me, but there's something else that is. You know what I'm saying? So it's all about reprogramming that thought process too. I had to do just in the last couple years, I had to recalibrate the way that I thought because I was very negative in my head all the time, even about myself.
That's a really good point is the stories we tell ourselves. Because a lot of times we are being led with fear, we're being a little delusional, and the stories that we're telling ourselves simply aren't true. And so that's a
Yep.
good point. I'm curious, how long did it take you to, as you mentioned, recalibrate your thought process to kind of unlearn stuff?
It took me a while, so I'm 33 now, and I think it just clicked maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. I started counseling, and I told my counselor, I'm like, I just keep doing this. Like, even though stuff goes good for me, I harbor on the bad too much sometimes. Like, I was in that thought process as like, dang, this is going. So it's like a trickle effect, if that makes sense. Like one bad thing happen, and then I keep thinking, okay, well, this bad can happen, this bad can happen, instead of thinking about what good can come out of whatever the situation is. So I just learned that in my 30s. Like, it's really about your thoughts and what you put out there on how you change the way that you think. So I was like, now when something doesn't go right, I'm like, oh, well, maybe that wasn't for me. It's something else out there. Or if something doesn't go right at work, there's other things. You know what I'm saying? It's not that bad. It's not the end of the world, is what I tell myself. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not the end of the world, period.
And I'm glad you shared that. Thank you for sharing because it takes time and some people just aren't willing to put in the work. They're not ready to quote unquote heal or
Yeah.
to unpack things or to really go into the darkness of themselves so they can kind of come out on the lighter side. It takes time, it takes energy, and some people just aren't committed to themselves in that way.
No, they're not. And I noticed that it has a lot to do with generational things too. Because if you grew up in a household that didn't really discuss issues or you kind of held stuff in, that stuff kind of, goes on with you until you decide to let it go. So at some point, I had to decide to let go of, oh, we don't talk about our feelings. Oh, I'm going to hold this in. It's time for me to leave that bag behind on where it was and start something new. So that's where I had to kind of retrain too. Like, you grew up in a household where you kind of just don't talk about issues. You kind of sweep it under the rug type thing over and over. And then after a while, that rug piles up. You know what I mean? You can see the stuff under the rug, but you haven't uncovered it. So I had to get to a space to where I'm pulling back that rug and taking back what I knew from before and training my mind to do something different.
That's true
Yes.
because sweeping things under the rug eats at our nervous system and it negatively, for the most part, impacts our relationships with ourselves, with other
Yes.
people, with work relationships. So you really have to make a decision like, I want to be better. I want to change. How good can my life get?
Yes, yes. And once you start thinking that way, I've noticed that my life has progressed so much since I started to change my frame of mind. Like, hey, you know what? Life can be better for me. It's time to unpack that bag, unpack, get from under that rug, and it's time to move forward. So once I decided to change that mindset, things on the up and up now. Like I feel better, I think better. Yes, opportunities. I feel like the opportunities are abundant when you start
Yeah.
changing the way that you think and the way that you move. And I want people to remember that it starts with you. It doesn't matter who was before, your parents, what your mama daddy did. It doesn't matter what your siblings did. It's time for you to do stuff for you and remove those excuses. You know what I mean? Because I feel like a lot of times we hear excuses on what happened in the past or who did what. At this point, that's over with. And it's time
Mm.
to, take control of who you are now. So that's really good. Yes. So, what are some misconceptions about spirituality that you often encounter? So, I know that people have their, it's all kind of things out there, spiritual things. What's some misconceptions that you've heard?
One misconception is are you worshiping the devil? Is this witchcraft? And a lot of it comes from misinformation. Because if you really want to get into it, if you proclaim yourself to be a Christian, you're doing a lot of rituals and spells and witchcraft.
Mm-hmm.
However, you have to be educated enough to understand that that is actually a fact. And so those are the two biggest misconceptions that, you don't believe in God and you're worshiping the devil and it's witchcraft and I don't do that devil stuff. So those would be some misconceptions regarding spirituality.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's what people, I think that it is, people think about Christian church and they put that with spirituality. So it is two separate things. And that's why I want people to just research and look up and see what, read about what you believe in or what, I think that's a lot of things too. People follow stuff on the internet instead of reading for themselves. And I want people to follow what they should do for themselves, not what everybody else is doing, not what a meme told you to do, not what a meme said, this quote said this and that. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
find out find out for yourself what you believe in and what resonates with you.
Exactly.
Period.
The great thing
Yes.
about life is we all have free will. So whatever you
Yeah.
decide to believe in it, baby. But don't project onto me your beliefs because we all are different. And
Yes.
spirituality is within all of us. It's in the
Mhm.
universe. It's intertwined in everything that we do. It's just some of us are more tapped into it than others.
Yes, yes, yes. And everybody believes in their, different things. And I always say, I believe in God, I believe Jesus, I believe in all of those things, but I never take my beliefs and put them off on somebody else. Like it's up to you to figure out what's for you. If that's not what you believe in, that's fine. But find something that you believe in. You know what I mean? Find something that resonates with you. That's so good. So I know you have the blog, Sacred Sunday, and it offers a wealth of content on self-care, spirituality, and self-mastery. So tell us a little bit more about your blog, where we can find it, how we can get connected.
Yeah, so my blog is my baby. It's my passion project that I started in 2020. KCTheCounselor.com is where you can find it. So the pillars of my blog is spirituality, self-care, and self-mastery. So
Okay.
within those pillars, I talk about different subjects related to life, self nurturing activities. I talk about grief, holistic remedies to different mental health conditions. So it's a slew of different topics within those three pillars.
Perfect, perfect. So what inspired you to start this blog?
Definitely needed an outlet from just the world. At some point, you just want to have a healthy way to channel energy. So that was the inspiration behind my blog. And even aside from that, I have always really liked writing. And I was like, okay, I've had a journal for years. I keep a journal. I've journaled for as long as I can remember. So that's pretty much where it started. Me writing in my journal, getting a fresh journal every time I was done with the one previous. And I was like, you know what? I could possibly write a blog post about this. Maybe somebody else can benefit from my thoughts and some of my strategies that I have implemented to improve my mental health and wellness. So that was pretty much the inspiration behind my blog. And I vividly remember one of my bosses in the past when I graduated from grad school. He told me that I need a hobby. I need something to do outside of this work because the work that I was doing was very demanding and stressful. So he was like, find something to do that's going to take your mind off of this work. And that was also an inspiration behind starting my blog as well.
Yeah, that's really good that you said that because I do a lot of things outside of work to keep my mind off of, what's going on there. I don't want my life to be consumed by my 9 to 5. I want my 9 to 5 to stay there. And then after my 9 to 5 is done, I want to focus on the things that I like, not work day and night. On the weekends, I'm thinking about work. Yes,
Exactly.
that's really good. That's really good. So I know you said that we can find your blog on kcthecounselor.com. What is your social media handle so we can follow you there?
Yes, follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok and Pinterest, Casey the Counselor. So that's my
Casey.
handle for all four of those platforms. I'm on Twitter, but I don't tweet that much. Maybe a
Yeah.
little bit here and there, but it's the
Yeah.
same KCTHECOUNSELOR, Casey the Counselor.
Perfect. So everybody make sure you go follow for tips, read the blog so you can get good tips and tricks from her. And what is a final thought that you would like the listeners to be left off with?
I need all the listeners to explore the relationship that they have with themselves. Everything boils down to self. That's the longest relationship we'll ever have is with ourselves. So think about that. Think about your relationship with yourself. What does that look like? How do you feel? What do you prioritize? How do you spend your money? Think about that. And based upon your thought, I would recommend that you write it down, maybe take some notes. And if you're in therapy or coaching, bring it to your therapist or your coach and talk about it a little bit more. Explore it just to see what comes out of that conversation. So that will be my takeaway advice.
That's perfect. Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Casey the counselor. And our listeners, thank you for tuning in to the Get Your Coins podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who can benefit from her wisdom today. Until next time, we'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Get Your Coin Sis podcast. We hope you found today's discussion insightful and empowering. Remember, every step you take towards personal growth and financial literacy brings you closer to your goals. Stay connected with us on social media and share your thoughts and stories. Until next time, keep striving, keep believing, and keep trusting in God's plan for your life. Stay blessed and see you in the next episode.